Remember when I told you when we were talking about African slavery that the Europeans couldn't colonize Africa during that time? And the reason was that they didn't have the weapons to do so. Well, now they do. Okay, today we're going to talk about imperialism or new imperialism. And this is a distinct time period that's different than colonialism. Colonialism is kind of the first round of imperialism, the first time that Europeans are going overseas and settle colonies. But this round of imperialism is its own distinct time period and is very different for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons is the causes. And so let's talk about the causes for imperialism or new imperialism. The first cause of imperialism is the Industrial Revolution. So we've talked about the Industrial Revolution and how it's basically going to skyrocket progression in Western Europe, especially Great Britain. Well, to keep up at that rate, they need more resources and new markets to sell goods for. And Africa and Southeast Asia are going to provide both. Another reason is social Darwinism. And I'm sure you've talked about Darwin's theory of evolution in your science classes, survival of the fittest. Well, social Darwinism is when this is applied to humans. And so the theory at the time was, if you look at history and you look at society now, the most progressed societies are the fittest. So Western European society. So basically, it's white supremacy. It's basically saying that whites are the fittest and other races are not, and so they will die out. And so to prevent them from dying out, it is the responsibility of the fittest, or the whites, to help them progress. And so this was known as white man's burden, that it was the responsibility of the Western Europeans and Americans use this too, to go in and help progress these people so they don't die out. And obviously, this is basically just used to justify what the whites are doing, because they're not going to help them progress necessarily. Most of imperialism is sucking the countries dry of resources. The third cause of imperialism is competition among European powers. And so we're not really invading each other as much after Napoleon. We have this balance of power in Europe. And so in order to compete with each other, we're grabbing land in other areas of the world. And so the more colonies I have, the more resources I have, the superior I am to you and other countries. And so it's a competition, especially among Western European countries. And, America does kind of jump in there as well, in order to have the most resources and have supremacy over the others. So again, the reasons for imperialism are the Industrial Revolution, social Darwinism, and competition among European powers. Once Europeans are in Africa and Asia, there's two different ways that they rule: direct and indirect. Direct, we can see with the French. This is where they go in and wipe out the government and put men on the ground and rule the country themselves. Indirect is like what the British did, especially in India, where they rule through the local leaders and just make the local leaders responsible to them. They have to report back to the British. And the British have the final say, but they don't necessarily have a lot of men on the ground. So again, those two ways of ruling, indirect and direct. So why now? Why are they able to imperialize or colonize Africa now? Well, again, they didn't have the weapons to do so back in the time of Atlantic slavery. They had the guns that you have to load and it takes forever and you get one shot. Well, now they have the Maxim gun, which is a machine gun. And so they can fire, hundreds of rounds per minute. And the Africans just aren't able to combat this. They're not able to resist this. The European powers use this time as an opportunity to spread religion, and it's more spreading religion as a justification for social Darwinism, that again, you have to help them progress. So if you look at a modern map of Africa today, you can see that the northern half is mostly Islamic and the southern half is mostly Christian. And this is due to imperialism, that in the southern half, it was those European countries that came in basically forced Christianity on the people in the southern part of Africa. And again, they used Christianity as a way to either make them feel better about what they were doing or to justify social Darwinism. While in some areas of imperialism the conditions weren't that different than before, in others they were just horrible. The best example of this is the Belgian Congo, where they go in and basically enslave the natives, and it's, compatible or maybe even worse than South American slavery. An example, they have rubber in the Congo, and you get rubber from trees. You have to, cut a hole in the tree and let the rubber sap come out, and so it was a very valued commodity. And if the men didn't go out and get enough rubber for their quota for the day, the Belgians would hold hostage the women and the children until they were able to get the rubber that they wanted. Also, if you didn't do what they wanted you to do, they would often cut off your hands. Just horrible conditions. At one point, they have kind of like a modern-day zoo in the Belgian area in Europe, and they bring back animals, but also native Congolese to Belgium, and they put them in a cage like animals, and they even have a sign out that says "Don't feed the natives," basically treating them like animals in a zoo. If you're interested in learning more about the Belgian Congo, there's a great documentary and book called King Leopold's Ghost. King Leopold is going to be the one who's in charge during this horrible treatment of the Congolese by the Belgian people. Also, the book Heart of Darkness is about the Belgian Congo. We do need to talk about the Boers, or the Afrikaans, in South Africa. Remember, these are the Dutch settlers that were there before the British came in, and we've had this struggle for power for a while between the two white nations. So the Dutch settlers and the British go to war. This is known as the Anglo-Boer War. And the British win, and so the Dutch settlers, the Afrikaans, kind of become like second-class citizens. They're still above the native Africans, but they're not at the level of the British in South Africa. We see a lot of migration during this time, especially in the British Empire. Remember, the British Empire is so vast. This is a saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire. They have colonies everywhere. And they'd often move their people around. For example, they'd have Indian people that came back, or Egyptian people that came back to Great Britain and would be like domestic servants. They also brought, or had the opportunity for the elite in those countries to come study university at schools in Great Britain, and so they would get like a law degree. Gandhi did this and come back, and this is going to help them in efforts to decolonize, to get the European powers out when we see, after World War II. Imperialism is very important at this time. It kind of defines, it's one of the defining parts of Period 5, but it's also going to lead to a number of events in Period 6. World War I and World War II are going to be known as world wars because of imperialism. We have this time of decolonization after World War II, where the European powers leave, and a lot of problems in Africa and Southeast Asia are going to be a result of imperialism. That's all I have for you today. I'll see you next time.